Today we are in conversation with Ramesh Mangaleswaran, who is one of the founders of Nayanta. He's part of the founding group at Nayanta University. Ramesh has had a very distinguished career. He was an alumnus of IIT Bombay, and at some point we'll look into some of his leadership experiences at IIT Bombay. He went on to IIM Ahmedabad and then had a 30-year career with McKinsey, where he was one of the younger people to make partner at McKinsey. He has had many remarkable organizational transformation experiences to his credit. Post McKinsey, he's gone on to a life of philanthropy, a life of contribution. And I think he's part of a group in India which is called Living the Promise, who have contributed more than 50% of their wealth to charitable and philanthropic causes. He works with a number of NGOs. Both he and his wife are, I think, quite passionate about their involvement in the social sector. That's something we have had some conversations around. He mentors a few startups, which he's passionate about. He's on the alumni boards of IIT Bombay and IIM Ahmedabad. And with all of this, he finds time to be an active marathoner and somebody who pursues meditation. I understand he's done Vipassana for the last
25 years.
So, yeah. So Ramesh, pleasure to be doing this conversation with you.
My pleasure to be here.
And Nayanta Conversations, we have our own workshops where we are doing teaching, but we have found conversation and questioning is a great way to get real experience from business leaders and leaders from different walks of life. Past conversations have been with people including 𝗥ส์𝗺𝗵 T.N. Nayanan, Montek Singh Ahluwalia, Ajay Shah, Ram Gua, and you are another illustrious addition to that list. So pleasure to have this conversation with you. Could you start by talking a bit about your childhood, early formative influences?
I actually am a very, very small town boy. I grew up in a factory town, and that's probably where my love for manufacturing got built and stayed. So my father was a career BHEL person, public sector. In the time that he had his career, there was no private sector to speak about. With BHEL Hyderabad, I still remember once a year, the factory would be open for families to visit. And I would look forward to that day in the year because I saw how power equipment was being put together, how foundries worked. So that's where I started. This is a town 35 kilometers away from Hyderabad, completely cut off. So I would say till my 10th standard, I was a frog in a well. I was very good in that little town. I did well in school, but frankly, it was in a little town. And then a few of us decided that we have to get out of this well a bit. So for my grade 11 and grade 12, we did what then was very, very adventurous. We would take a bus every day, 35 kilometers each way, to go into the city of Hyderabad and do our 11th and 12th. That's when I first heard of IIT. And I decided that since I like engineering, and this is a not so bad brand of engineering colleges to go to, I'll go there. And then IIT Bombay happened. But the reason I bring up the small town experience is it shaped who I am. I think we grew up in a nuclear family, just my parents and my sister. When you're in a nuclear family, then all happiness is together, all sadness is shared. Friends become very important. And to this date, I have family friends who I'm closer to than I am to some of my uncles and aunts. Because like we had a neighbor, my father and that uncle met as bachelors. So we're still in touch with that family. And they are in Hyderabad, I still visit him. So it shaped who I was. So that's my early growing up.
Are there incidences or even role models from that time which have kind of shaped your beliefs in any way, if you look back to it?
From that time, and I said this recently somewhere, it was actually my maternal grandmother. She didn't go to school, but wise beyond her years. My mother's side of the family is a very large family, 5 boys, 4 girls. And I would spend a lot of time in my summer vacations with my grandmother. And there's a tinge of regret in my grandmother. All her sons did remarkably well. 4 of my 5 uncles went abroad in the 60s because that was then the ticket to prosperity. If they had not gone abroad, we would have still been lower middle class in a tier 2 village in Tamil Nadu. And the fifth son became a very accomplished bureaucrat in Delhi. But, the tinge of disappointment was I did all this, but see, in my old years, I'm alone. And you won't believe this, Ranjan. I made a decision then that I will not go abroad. I got into IIT, but I decided I will not go abroad. And my grandmother was the influence on it. So much so that in 1989, if you were from IIT and didn't go abroad...
you had to explain why you were not going abroad.
Not just explain. The rumor in BHL Township was this kid has failed at IIT. Because local engineering kids are all going to the US. If this guy, after getting into IIT and spending 4 years there, the Mangaleswaran family is not telling the truth. This guy has not done well at IIT. But my grandmother, and I owe it to her. And at 89, it was a stupid decision to make. It was a stupid decision to make to stay back in India. I went and I started my career in Tata Steel, 2 years. Great organization, very good. But pardon my saying so, at that point, it was not a very fast-paced organization. The thing I had to look forward to in life was 25 years later, I would have run a section of a large steel mill. And there was more gas in the tank than to do it. And frankly, MBA was not even on the cards. Because I was always clear I'll be an engineer. And then I went to IIM because I didn't want to be in Jamshedpur. I still have great friends in Jamshedpur. Some of my friends have gone on to become very senior leaders there, but I had to change it. So staying back in India, staying committed to manufacturing, that love came from my father. To this date, I think my dad is now almost 90. I heard what you were saying about your father. Genuinely, good engineer who liked to solve problems.
So, Ramesh, in the old engineering family, because my dad was an OR guy also, doing an MBA was kind of looked down upon. It was, you were moving to the dark side.
Of course.
How did you kind of handle that?
No, it was a big dilemma, and I'll say this quite openly. At IIM, my first year summer job, because you had to do what everyone else does, was with Citibank. Okay, and I did this, I did well. They called me on the last day. They said, we like you.
We'll give you a job offer.
We'll give you a job offer. I said, okay, thank you. Let me think about it. And then, Ranjan, I really thought about it. I didn't come to do an MBA to go into banking. I didn't come to do an MBA to go into doing consumer marketing. There's jobs there. So I looked through the options that I had, and kid you not, I applied to 4 jobs on campus. I applied to McKinsey. I applied to Tata Administrative Service because I knew that that would take me back to the
also a Tata person.
I was a Tata person, and I knew that it would take me back to the Tata group, but with a 5-year head start in sort of where they placed me. I applied to ICICI, which I always had respect for, because at that point in time, there was still a project finance organization.
Because it was industrial finance.
Exactly. They were financing projects. And I applied to Vinayak Chatterjee's Feedback Ventures. These were the 4. High risk strategy. And then I got into McKinsey, which was sort of the day one. And almost 70% of my life in McKinsey was not serving a bank, was not serving a consumer good company, was not serving a manufacturing, pharmaceutical company. It was all about manufacturing and infrastructure. So I feel like I still kept that passion of mine around manufacturing going. And these days I spend a lot of time with deep tech startups. I was telling someone yesterday that I'm now mentoring what I call will be India's SpaceX. So we'll see where life takes them.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. I want to look at IIT and IIM a bit more, because I recently came to know, and I think that Hrishikesh Krishnan, who is now the Vice Chancellor of Ashoka, Pramod Sinha, who is now the Chairman of the Board, Sanjeev Puri, ITC, they all worked on the IIT Kanpur Cultural Festival together.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about leadership experiences during your student period and how they've shaped you?
Oh, yeah, big. In fact, I would say that what shaped me was more what I did outside the classroom than in the classroom. I was a reasonable student, but since you're also from IIT Bombay, one of my biggest leadership experiences was in my final year, me and a friend of mine were the lead organizers of Mode Indigo. which in 1989, we raised 4.5 lakhs of rupees, which was not a small amount. We got 𝗥ส์𝗷𝗵𝗹𝗶𝗶 and Vinayak to play at the all-night classical at the Convocation Hall. We had to deal with sort of logistical arrangements, security arrangements, and all of that. So, huge amount of responsibility, huge amount of learning, and there was always a desire to say that my mood indigo has to be better than the previous mood indigo. This IIT, there's this spirit of competition.
It's a bragging rights thing almost.
A spirit of competition, everything. This has to be people have to be talking about this. So even today, when I meet people, I'll say, guys, you remember this? Okay, we got 𝗥ส์𝗷𝗵𝗹𝗶 to come and play all night.
In IIT, another consideration was how many of the girls' colleges landed up for.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
So that was a. So looking back,
so I had many leadership roles at IIT. The last one was obviously mood indigo, and I for my year.
You fought an election also. Or you didn't fight?
I fought and lost an election, which also is a great learning in of itself, because I fought and lost an election which in the history of IIT up until then was the only election that had been cancelled because there was malpractice in it. I can't believe that. There was malpractice in that election, and so the dean decided to cancel the election.
Yeah. So, but you know the good thing about these elections, you had to go wing to wing and present.
Yeah.
And you're going wing to wing with a group of fairly cynical engineers who are, their vote matters, but they kind of also, we are meeting this guy, let's rag him a bit kind of a thing. So it's very good for your public speaking experience, right? You're kind of, okay, looking back, IIT and IIM, and connecting the dots looking backwards, what did IIT teach you? What did IIM teach you? And if you were to critique these, okay, let me stay with that and then also critique these educational experiences.
IIT was above all, more than the learning, it was a growing up experience. I keep saying that you go in as a boy, you come out as a man, and everything, right? Living independently, learning to tolerate each other, keeping up with the pressure, trying to figure out who you are, what you want to do. So IIT was simply the most accelerated growing up phase of my life, because up until then, the growing up opportunities were context constrained. I grew up in a township or in a city. Here you suddenly met people who were almost all of them smarter than you, all of them driven in different ways. So I would say huge learning experience into who you are, what you wanted to do, the choices you wanted to make, all of that. And I think I'll always be indebted to IIT, and that's why I give back to IIT. I give back money, I give back time, I give back networks, whatever I can, because I think that was the steepest learning curve and evolving as a leader in inverted commas. I mean, if organizing mood indigo is leadership, it was leadership all the same. For a 21-year-old, that's a reasonable leadership experience. So that's what sort of IIT did. And I have to say, best friendships of my life, not from school. Interestingly, not from MBA, because I ended up meeting my wife at MBA, so she took away a lot of my time. So I guess,
at least one best friendship,
one best friend I got from IIT. But the friends from IIT are people that I would say I would confide in the most. So last year, for instance, one of my very close friends, his son got married. And 8 of us got together from around the world, and we all showed up in California. And now our families are with us, and our children couldn't believe how we were behaving. And they're like, because it was just like, this was the cohort I grew up with. I mean, these guys know my secrets. These guys know my fears. They know if something is bothering me, I'm telling you, I'll call one of them more than I would call my sister.
It's a very vulnerable period, and I think most people would agree that the engineering on the undergraduate experience, the peers are probably more critical than the classes.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, just the quality and diversity of peers. But I'm saying looking back, so for me, if I look back on IIT Bombay, I think what did it teach me beyond the peers? I think it taught me structured thinking.
Yeah.
So what did you get from IIT Bombay and what did you get from IIM Ahmedabad in terms of learning and the way you think?
I think, and we can talk about it later, is one of the things which I then followed through all my life is problem solving. I think this whole idea of spotting a problem, structuring a problem, solving a problem were things that frankly I learned early, and I'm still sort of perfecting it. In a way, I'm trying to figure out how does this whole thing work in this AI age. But problem solving was probably the biggest thing that I learned. And I'll come to it in a minute. There is another part of it, which I wish I'd learned, which I didn't learn, either at IIT or IIM, is what does it take to implement a solution once you've solved the problem? I would say that at being an engineer and being a cocky engineer, I was almost cynical of the software courses at IIM Ahmedabad. And if you were to ask me if there's one thing I'll do all over again,
it's always the OB courses.
I will go back and pay more respect to those software courses around why does conflict happen? How do you influence people? How do you influence without authority? I used to get bored. I said, this is a whole lot of bullshit. And that one I didn't. I mean, frankly, that muscle got built post MBA in my working career. But I think that, and I say this that effective problem solving is really two wings of a bird. Only one wing is solving the problem. The second wing is getting it done. And getting it done is a far, far more nuanced thing than solving the problem. And that appreciation of the latter didn't come through my formal education.
Right. So what is interesting is that the value that you attach to understanding implementation is quite contrary to the stereotypes that most people have of consulting.
Of course.
Right. So just you want to comment on that? How you reconcile, how do you look at that?
On a lighter note, consulting is the most joked about profession. Okay. Because everyone has a joke about a consultant. But I also say that I have the best collection of consultants' jokes because you guys only know the consulting jokes in your organization. I have them from 100 organizations because every time I go to an organization, they'll tell me a consulting joke. So I have the best consulting joke. But on a more serious note, on a serious note, listen, our clients are all smart people. Period. Okay. And I have the greatest respect for every client of mine. They pay us big bucks. The bucks are not small, not to just us, but to the entire industry. And we've been around for 100 years. So if the buyer is a sophisticated buyer and there is some exchange of value that is happening, and this value exchange has continued for 100 years, then there is something real about it. You can't sell snake oil for 100 years. No? So there is something real about it. And I think the thing that is real about it is consultants are not, and now in McKinsey we use this expression, saying we are not insight partners. We are impact partners. Insight can be got, and insight can come from many ways. But when you move from insight to impact, you start to embrace the second part of what I said. So you say, hey, I just gave Ranjan a lovely idea. Ranjan is a smart guy. Why is he not doing it? Now I have to get into the mind of Ranjan. So there's something about why Ranjan is not doing it. Oh, maybe that Ranjan is worried that if he does this, then frankly, he may not get enough reward, he may not get enough recognition. Now I have to get into understanding where he's coming from. So I think consulting works best when you combine these two. The ability to generate insight and the ability to transform that insight into impact and to not do it alone. The biggest myth is that consulting is outsourced management. It is not. Consulting is actually coaching management teams towards a goal. And therefore, I would argue that everyone in this room is a consultant. Anyone who is an indirect leader, meaning they are taking responsibility for an outcome that they don't directly do, meaning you have to get work done by somebody, you have to solve a problem. You are a consultant. Because you have to do the same thing that I used to do. You have to find a problem to solve. You have to solve it effectively. You have to solve it with your team. You have to get it implemented. You have to get it implemented in a way that is durable. All those challenges apply to you also. So I would say that this is just skill building of a different kind.
Can you, we've kind of, because I responded to something, we've kind of not gone through your McKinsey journey.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at two dimensions, and we can make this open-ended and you tell the story in your own way. One is to talk about your journey in McKinsey, the roles you had, how you had very fast growth in that organization. Equally, talk about what consulting has taught you about decision-making, about problem-solving. So both of these, if you could.
No. So listen, at the time that McKinsey came to India, which was 1992, this concept of consulting didn't exist. Okay. The fact that you can take 22 to 26-year-olds, give them a computer, we used to get laptops then, and have them visit a client and solve a problem was not the model of consulting. The model of consulting was consulting is done by wise old people who will sit in a long room. They'll sit and give gyan. I'll not take names, but they were management gurus that were being paid big bucks. Even foreigners would come for 2 months. Some of those foreigners still come and do these sessions. But the concept of consulting was, it comes from a position of experience and wisdom. That used to be the concept of consulting. And we challenged that paradigm. We said that is not what consulting is. Consulting is what I just said: structured problem solving on the one hand, and diligent implementation on the other. And we had to, in a way, introduce this concept to India. Because the prevailing concept was wise people giving advice. And we said, no, this is possible. And therefore, the first few years were not easy years. You had to, in a way, operate at the concept level and not at the firm level. So to this date, and I have friends from all my so-called competitor firms, they all acknowledge us for creating what management consulting is. So I think, so the biggest learning I had was a new profession in a new market, and therefore all the joys of entrepreneurship that come with that. So when I started, for instance, there were only 10 of us in India. It was not efficient to have a group of trainers come and train us in India. So the 10 of us were made into groups of 4, and we were sent off to Sweden for training, because that was cheaper for the firm to send us to another market to train. Because we operated out of 2 hotel rooms in Oberoi in Bombay and 2 hotel rooms in Delhi. And then we grew. When I left McKinsey end of 2022, we had grown the consulting practice to 1,000 people. And we had introduced support of another 3,500 people in India. So my biggest learning has been one of actually entrepreneurship. From 10 to 1,000, which is, by the way, 100 times growth in 30 times. Bringing sophistication into the market, bringing sophistication into our work. And with every one of that, you learn. And one of the things I've learned is that you learn the most from your clients. And so I've learned to have nothing but unequivocal respect for clients and what they achieve. If you approach this consulting profession as an unequal profession, that I have intellectual superiority, I have intellectual arrogance. See, I went to IIT, I went to IIM, I'm McKinsey. You will lose it on day one. Because when clients can sense it, when you're approaching them from a sense of parity, or a sense of superiority, or a sense of humility. Okay? I would say even parity doesn't work. You have to be humble and say, you have done very well in what you set out to do. I am not even pretending to be as good as you in what you do. But I can tell you one thing. I can see what you do differently from you, how you can see what you do. So I always say that the analogy I therefore like of consulting is that of a coach and not of a doctor. I, in fact, have a big problem with this doctor analogy. Doctor means that you have a problem. I will diagnose and tell you. I will diagnose and I'll tell you, and I'll be strict with you. Right? 3 goli nahi khaya, ये नहीं कहा, अगला टेस्ट करने का. That's a wrong analogy. Coach means you're very good at your game. Okay. I'm not as good at your game as you. The best coaches were not the best players. But I can see your game differently from you too. Ranjan, आपका backlift थोड़ा ज़्यादा है. Okay. You're not focusing on the gap. You're focusing on the fielder. I saw that. I tell you that. So if you take this complementary mindset, you enjoy this a lot.
So that's really good, and that's I think refreshingly different from the way even some consultants we see now operate. And I think it's a.
But just to go back to it, and that's why I'm saying consulting is not about what I did at a firm called a consulting firm. The way I described what I did applies to each of you in the way you lead your teams.
So I think that's what we want to get a bit more granular on, that if you were advising this group of leaders about what they can learn from how consultants think about problem solving.
Yeah.
Can you distill that into some usable kind of...
Yeah, I will. And obviously I've done this many times. I think the most important first step in problem solving is problem spotting. Have you picked what is the problem that you're trying to solve? I think people gloss over it. And have you got a reasonable amount of understanding of the people who are solving the problem, that this is the problem that we are trying to solve? So I think with this group, I shared a thing called a problem statement worksheet. It's a very simple thing. It almost seems trivial, but it is so good to say this is the problem that we are trying to solve. Do we know when the problem will be solved? Do we know what is outside of the... what are the boundary conditions that are excluded? Do we know what could get in the way of solving the problem? Just explicitly thinking about it is the most important first step in problem solving. I call it problem spotting and problem definition stage. The second phase is obviously problem solving, going and solving the problem, where in my mind, the most important skill is prioritization and dynamic prioritization. Because the mistake that people make is, we prioritized it. But frankly, you prioritized it, you've gone out, you got some facts, those facts are coming back to you. Now, are the facts forcing you to change your priorities? And if you keep changing it, that's the middle piece of it, which is the problem solving part of it. This is the problem spotting, problem solving. And I think problem solving will become more efficient now. I can see how AI will improve the ability to solve a problem. You don't need to do that many spreadsheets. You can quickly get points of view. You can get a lot of information in a synthesized way a lot faster. So that piece is going to become more efficient. But prioritization will still be a human function, according to me, because prioritization requires judgment. And as of now, time will tell where AI goes. AI doesn't have judgment. Okay, AI has a lot of capacity to process data, but it still doesn't have judgment. The third part of it in problem solving to me is synthesis. At the end of the day, you could have solved the problem, but if you can't succinctly communicate what the outcome was, and synthesis is a thinking issue, not a communication issue. And we would always say this: if you got a minute with the CEO, okay. And the famous one is obviously the elevator test, right? You get into the elevator, and in the time that you step out of the elevator, would you have delivered your message? And you get better and better at sharper synthesis. So all of this is still in the problem-solving realm of it. And if you're getting the mental model, there's a second piece of it. This is 20% of the work done. 80% of it is taking it from that synthesized solution that you have and getting it done. Getting it done means seeing the real world outcome for it. So a terrible consultant is a consultant who thinks that their work ends with the report. Now, a lot of them still floating around. A good consultant is a person who stays still.
And it used to work with handing over the presentation. And I think even clients have moved much more kind of towards implementation. I had one question on the method, and this is more coming from my design thinking kind of background, which is that one of the thoughts I always had with consulting, and I think it works fine for some problems, is that many consultants seem to start with a hypothesis.
Yeah.
And that is also because of the breadth and depth of knowledge management that you have available to you, similar assignments. So is there a danger that for unstructured or innovative work, hypothesis will bias your fact-finding?
Not necessarily. I still think that what you're saying will happen if you start with hypothesis and you stay with your hypothesis. So long as you have the openness to revisit your hypothesis as new facts are coming your way, to start with hypothesis, which is the way I've been trained to do, is an efficient way to start it.
It's an efficiency thing.
It's an efficient way to solve it, and frankly, for the profession that I was in, efficiency mattered, because every day you were at the client, you had to be efficient.
Yeah, we've also taught them confirmation bias. So
I know, and therefore, if you build debiasing, if you build a loop of revisiting the hypothesis, if you build all of that in, then you take away some of the risks. I hear your risk, okay, and I'm not denying the risk. But I always start with this concept of whenever I start to solve a problem, I think it is important to have a 2-hour answer, a 2-day answer, a 2-week answer, and a 2-month answer. If you can't get a 2-hour answer, just get your mind around it. It may be wrong. It may be very different from your 2-month answer, but it's just that it's one way to keep the process going forward. You may throw away everything that you came up with a 2-hour answer, but I'm a little bit trained to go with that answer, go find facts, revise the answer, find more facts, revise answer, find more facts.
There is a famous Steve Jobs video on consulting. Have you seen it?
No, thankfully one of that I haven't seen.
So no, but it's a good provocation. I think you've handled it in the way you've answered your questions and talked about implementation. But essentially, he's talking to a group of recent MBA graduates, and he says, "How many of you are doing manufacturing?" Not a hand goes up. How many of them are doing consulting? Half the hands go up. And he said, "That's bad. That's really bad." And essentially, his point was, the way he makes it is that my issue with you guys becoming consultants directly is you know what a banana is, you know what an orange is, you know what an apple is, you know but you've never really tasted the deep taste of a banana. What he means is that you've never really known any business inside from implementation. That's his critique. Would you like to respond to that?
No. Clearly, that's not the case. Simply because consulting doesn't exist in a vacuum. At the end of the day, you're a consultant to a pharma company, or you're a consultant to a manufacturing company, or you're a consultant to a logistics company, or to a bank, or something like that. So consultants don't operate in a stratosphere of their own. So they in a way get their influence, their knowledge from the client context. And I mean, at least the firm that
I think what he's saying is, the depth of experience that comes with the pain of implementation is an important part of learning.
Yeah.
So how does one compensate that?
But clients have moved on that dimension. No client brings in a consultant for a point of view anymore. At least not the big consultant. Clients bring in consultants to get something done. So in a way, my shoulder is as much to the wheel to get things done as that of the line manager. But in a way, I'm more handicapped than the line manager, because the manager has authority, I don't have authority. The manager has authority, I have influence. So I have to build my influence muscle. I have to build my influence muscle to Ranjan, the manager. Ranjan has all the people reporting to him. All the people reporting to Ranjan have no reason to listen to Ramesh. My task is to now work with Ranjan to get it done. So in a way, that is the capability that a good consultant has. So I've seen consultants and consultants. Obviously, I always say this, that a good consultant has obviously the intellectual curiosity and the intellectual ability to solve a problem, but also has the EQ to sense what it takes to implement a problem. And high IQ people perish very early. High EQ people who cannot solve a problem, a demanding problem, lose client respect. So you have to do both.
So Ramesh, I think for you, to me, if I am connecting this, you started with manufacturing.
Yeah.
So that has influenced your implementation orientation, because the language that I'm getting from you is not the average language. It's a different language. What proportion of McKinsey consultants do you think had this kind of orientation?
No, but let me answer this question differently. First of all, if 10 people join a firm like McKinsey, 6 years out, 2 will stay.
That's right.
Okay. So 8 have left. Question is, where have the 8 gone? 8 have gone almost always into the so-called real world. They are either in a company, or they are doing a startup, or they are doing real stuff. And they are doing it fairly early in their career. I mean, you start in consulting when you're 22 to 25, and if I told you that 8 out of 10 have left in 5-6 years, by the time you're 30, 31, they've gone. So there are more ex-consultants walking around than there are.
And they knew what the deal was when they joined. I mean,
Exactly.
they knew that it would be that way.
And we know it.
Right.
We know it. And that number falls off even more. Like if you look at people of my vintage, people who do 30 years in consulting firm, it's 1 in 500. That's roughly the ratio. So consulting is not a career. For 95% of people who enter consulting is a learning opportunity. It is a learning opportunity to learn from your clients, to learn from your peers, to get things done. And therefore, to go back to your question, 95% of the people are working on solving problems in the real world. And that's why many times studies have been done, long-term studies around which are the leadership factories. I mean, who comes up on that list always changes. But McKinsey is always on that list for giving CEOs.
Also beyond corporate, right? And into policy.
Into policy, into social sector, into every sector. Because what we are teaching in a way is becoming an effective leader in a practical environment.
So there are other questions on consulting and how consulting will move with AI, but I think this is a good time to let the audience in for the first time.
Sure.
So we've talked about consulting, we've talked about problem solving and what we can learn from what the best consultants do. We've also talked about Ramesh's personal journey and some of... so any questions so far? Yeah, we'll need the mic, I think.
Yeah.
Just introduce yourself, then have the question, and then... And we'll go back to life post McKinsey next phase.
Thank you for the lovely insight in my life and learnings. I'm 𝗕ហ៊𝗷𝗲𝗍𝗲. I'm part of Partner Emeritus. I've been into strategy as well as now I manage the 9 functions in marketing.
Yeah.
Earlier we mentioned that you have been a Vipassana for 25 years. I want to get your learnings and reflections of how it has helped you in your personal life as well as in your professional life.
Yeah, that's an easy answer. If I had not done Vipassana when I did in 2002 for the first time, I was a young partner. I thought that I'd achieved most of what I had to achieve in life. I bought my apartment, my kids were born, and everything was done. But this whole thing around looking within is what Vipassana has taught me. I can say confidently that it extended my professional life. So I don't think I'm done yet. Okay, I still think of where I am as sort of, I'm probably 2/3 of my way through life, my active life. And Vipassana has given me the ability to see life very differently, which by the way is what Vipassana means. Pashyana means to see. Vipassana means to see the same thing differently. And see the same thing differently, all it means is that you cannot change what is happening to you. You cannot change the behavior of anybody. You cannot change your own behavior also, but what you can change is how you view it. So that's what it has taught me, not in a theoretical way. Theory, though I have said, everyone will resonate with the theory, but in an experiential way. Because this, what I just said, is easier said than done. How do you internalize in you? And someone used this expression earlier, and I want to bring that back because that is the core concept of Vipassana, 𝗥ส์𝗷𝗷𝗲𝗍. 𝗥ส์𝗷𝗷𝗲𝗍 is the ability to be a witness and not be an actor. All of us are actors. To be able to be a witness, you have to create some separation from the act. The act is you, by the way. So it's a profound thing. I'm happy to discuss it, but this cannot be thought. I mean, I can make a speech, I can write 5 slides. This has to be experienced. So that's what it has changed me. It has changed me in a it extended my professional life. I think it has extended my physical life.
My name is 𝗥𝗺𝗵𝗹𝗲𝗍. I'm from Ralson Tires. So, I mean, I could see from the beginning of career, you could able to decide enough. You have decided not to go to USA for your conversation. Now you decided to you have become a coach. So what is the mechanism to decide in a life that enough is enough? And this is the
So this was a question that was coming. So it's, how do you make these critical life transitions? You could have stayed on in McKinsey for a few more years easily, right? And many people leave and you've kind of, you're not consulting actively and you've kind of moved on to other things. So how do you decide when the time is right for a transition?
This is one of my favorite poems. It's by a person called 𝗕𝗵𝗵𝗹𝗲𝗍. Okay, it's called Man in the Glass. If you haven't read it, you should read it. Basically, there's only one truthful conversation that all of us can have. There's only one truthful conversation that all of us can have is with the man or the woman in the glass. Who's the man in the glass? You. Okay. So there is always a little voice in you that is expressing to you whether you're fully at ease with what you're doing or there is imbalance in what you're doing. All of us know it. We just have, Hindi mein bolte hain mukhota. We are all wearing masks. We are all wearing masks because this guy's wearing a mask of Vice Chancellor. I'm wearing mask of Senior Partner Emeritus. You're wearing mask. Titles is a mask. The house you live in is a mask. The society, the type of travel you do is a mask. बहुत सारे मुखौटे हैं. But when you talk to the man in the glass, there is no mask. And so my question back to you is, do you have that conversation with yourself, that space for reflection? Because every time you have that conversations, one voice will start getting sharper and sharper and sharper. And the voice that will get sharper is, I'm plateauing in what I'm doing now. I want to do something different. It will happen in work also. Okay, you'll be plateauing in your role, so you may feel and tell the boss, मेरे strategy नहीं करना है, sales करना है, I have to go to another country. We are all seeking different opportunities. So, short answer to you is, and I have over time, I think, improved my ability to have honest conversations with myself, and it really helps that I have a life partner who calls my bullshit out real time. So I think I'm enormously blessed to have her.
It's really valuable.
Have her in my life, because even when, sometimes I make the wrong calls. I mean, you think I went through 30 years at McKinsey saying, oh, I will be there for 30 years. Every 3 years I felt like, hey, I'm done with this, something else, a headhunter has called, should I take the call? And she would say, what are you saying? You're doing well, you're learning. Just because you had one bad project, one difficult client, one team experience, why are you doing this? So I'm saying one is listening to your voice, but second is, and my wife is just one of them. I've been very blessed to have a few mentors. Second is, and you guys were talking about it in the morning. For me, it was real. I didn't give it that expression then. This concept of a personal board. That you have 2 to 4 people who need not be from your...
Brajesh has already spent time on. So it's
need not be, by the way, from your place of work. By the way, one of my so-called, my personal board budget, 3 of the 4 of them are not alive anymore. 4 out of 5 of them are not alive anymore. Only my wife is. But I can still have conversations with them. And I'm not any voodooist or something that I can have conversations with the dead. But in my time that I had spent with them, I had learned how they would process some of the choices that I am processing. One of them was my family guru, okay? One of them was my father-in-law. One of them was the founder of McKinsey in India, and one was Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗵. Just very different people. None of whom, except the person at McKinsey, none of them saw me at work. But they had a point of view that I learned to appreciate. So answer is, first, tune into the ability to talk to yourself. Easier said than done. 2, create a group of people that you know have nothing but your good interest at heart. Wo bahut important hai. That they should have ekdam, what I call unconditional love for you. Unconditional love. If they have unconditional love for you, then you will, after a while, and he was saying it about his father, then you start to calibrate your decisions.
That's really helpful. Piyush.
Dr. 𝗕𝗲𝗿𝗲𝗃. We need a point that consultants actually comes in the picture to be an impact. Is that where the problem in an organization? The biggest problem is the employee acknowledging that there is a problem.
Yeah.
That's why the consultants are not making acknowledge that there is a problem. But employees in that organization is good enough to understand that there is a problem. They themselves can be the solution to the problem. So acknowledging the problem may be the biggest problem of all. There is a problem. We need to address it.
And I agree. I fully agree with you. Frankly, not every client organization needs consultants. And by the way, total coverage of consultants, if you take the universe of organizations and take consultants of all shape and form, is less than 15% of organizations at best are using consultants. It's just that it's very visible, jokes are made about it. So aapko lagta hai ki there are lots of consultants walking around, but utne sare consultants nahi hai. 85. I would always say that the real competition to a consultant is not another consulting firm. The real competition to a consultant is the client, which makes it very complicated. How many professions or industry you've seen where... so therefore, I have spent years with few people who have turned out to be very good friends of mine, but I never did a consulting project for them because I would tell that person saying, your organization is not consultant ready. Because you have the ability to solve problems, or you will not appreciate a so-called outsider helping you solve a problem. So what I'm basically saying is, if an organization has the ability to align on a problem and solve it, they don't need a consultant. That's why. Acknowledge the problem, and alignment is the big issue. The part of what we do sometimes is, everyone tells the same thing in private, but we do some process of getting them to agree that is the problem. Just that. And those are all the little tools and tricks that we have learned over time. But most places there isn't acknowledgement and there isn't alignment.
So I'm just building on this, and since I think this is a good conversation to also surface some of the very common perceptions on consulting and at least get an informed take on them, right? So I had a friend who was a partner in, I think, Bain or BCG, I will not take the name given what, and then left and moved into a part-time role.
Yeah.
And he said, what my part-time role allowed me to do was say no to some assignments.
Yeah.
Because he said there were some consulting assignments I was allergic to, where the client was using the consultant to validate something that they had 80% decided. And they were almost trying to legalize an unpopular decision. If you want to comment on.
No, by the way, and that's true. But that's true of almost every decision that we make in life. If you have to make a decision from a position of plenty, you have a certain comfort in making that decision. If you have to make a decision from a position of scarcity, you will make a different decision. Okay, and this applies to everything. Yeah. So a good consultant should always operate from a position of plenty. Should have the ability to turn down work. But you will have the ability to turn down work only if you feel like you can get more work. So it boils down to a issue of self-confidence. And that's why you will see that when a person is an early partner, you will almost see the insecurity in the partner, the greenness behind that, because this person is getting the first project. So the first project is a project. But then we say, you have to learn to say no. You have to say, and over time, I mean, towards the end of my career, I was saying no far more times than I was saying yes. I mean, some of my younger colleagues didn't like it because they were still in the phase where they had to say yes. But this approaching a situation from plenty, which I would argue is the growth mindset. Okay, the growth mindset always wins over the fixed mindset, is the right thing to do. So when your friend went part-time, his concept of plenty changed.
Yeah,
He didn't need 4 more projects, but he was getting 4 projects. He had to only say yes to 2 projects. And that just gave him the headroom to do.
That's perceptive.
So I would have told him, boss, when you're full-time, you could have gone and got 8 projects. You could have said no to 4.
So one more thing that I found remarkable about consulting is the patience over long sales cycles.
Oh, yeah.
So what can B2B marketers learn from the way consulting works on getting really high-value deals over an extended period of time?
High-value deals are almost never done because of what you're transacting. The high-value deals are always done based on who's transacting. So I would have a simple rule saying, build relationship first and the transaction will follow. Which is basically a mindset that you have to take, that मैं दोस्ती बना रहा हूँ, मैं relationship बना रहा हूँ. Ranjan now values meeting me, because whenever he meets me, I touch him in some ways.
I add value. I
add value to him.
In an unselfish kind of way.
In an unselfish kind of way. This is what I said in the trust equation. So Ranjan keeps meeting me. Every 2 months he meets me. Then he likes me a lot. He says, let's meet for dinner. He likes me even more. One of these weekends, let's meet with spouses. He likes me even more. मैं छुट्टी पे जा रहा हूँ. Do you guys want to join me? So you build the relationship, whatever is possible first. Once that relationship is built and once that base of trust is built, the harvest cycle starts. It starts in any B2B thing. Now the problem is, and we were very fortunate because we had a corporate structure which didn't have short-term goals. The question is, how do you do what I'm doing if you also have to have
a funnel and
a closure? There my answer is, if you're purposeful about it and if you understood the extent of the funnel and the velocity of the funnel. Okay, these are the only 2 things to understand. You can design your life around it. So I had a simple rule. If I needed to have 2 active projects, I needed to have 4 proposals. And for 4 proposals, I had to have 8 conversations. And for 8 conversations, I had to have 16 acquaintances. I made this up on my own. So I would not look at whether I had 2 projects. I would look at whether I have 16 early conversations. And 16 early conversations with people and that frankly is the concept of a B2B sales cycle. At 16 becoming 2, for some is 6 months, for some is 12 months. They know, by the way, a good B2B salesperson knows the shape of the funnel and the velocity of the funnel.
Makes a lot of sense. And there's also a lot of expertise and positioning and all of those kind of things that goes into this. Are there any more questions on the consulting piece? Because then I would like to move to phase 3. Yes, Mehul.
Maybe that's most asked questions to the consultant, and I'll ask the AI piece.
Yeah.
And in a foundational way, it will reshape consultancy for sure. And it's matter of time, and say that the whole judgment is not yet there, but that's a yet to it, and it's just a matter of time where it'll consume all the knowledge, and its ability to then take a decision and change would be far better. I'm not taking it yet to humans versus AI kind of thing, but in a consulting context. What do you think 5 years from now? How would?
I think 2 things will happen. I've obviously thought about this a lot. the watermark will shift on the nature of problems that consultants will solve. So there'll be a set of problems that we used to solve before that we won't even be called because it will not be worth spending $1 to solve the problem. So the watermark will shift. But I come from a view that there are enough and more problems to be solved. So if the watermark is shifted, it is very good. We are going to solve higher value problems. So that one shift will surely happen. And not being a deep expert on AI, I will say that no matter how sophisticated AI becomes, there will still be a role for what I call human qualities. In fact, I was telling Ranjan this yesterday. I'm now beginning to talk about this concept of integrative intelligence, which is the ability to combine classic human intelligence, which is empathy, feeling, all of that, sensitivity, all of that with technology. So that will stay for a long time. So I actually think that the best years of the profession are here to come. And by the way, if you take a step back from consulting, this is true of any technology shift that happened. Okay, any technology shift that happened. I don't know how many of you saw the India in the 80s. Okay, let's take an example of India in the 80s. Banks. We had physical passbooks, tellers who wrongly count money and give it to you. You will recount the money and say this 𝗕ป์𝗿𝗲𝗀𝗵 and all of that. Gone. How many of you have a physical passbook anymore? How many of you have gone where a human being across the counter has given you money? Has the banking sector in this country shrunk? It has grown by an order of magnitude because there are newer and newer services that you now expect from a bank. That teller who did not retrain himself or herself to become a customer service officer went out of work. So I jokingly say that when horse carriages went out and cars came in, the people who were riding the horse carriages became car drivers, but they had to become car drivers. The horses, by the way, were happy not to be pulling horses because that's not what the horse was designed for. Horse wanted to go back into a meadow, and if you are a good horse, it wanted to become a race horse. घोड़ा भी खुश था, आदमी भी खुश था, और दुनिया भी खुश था. So this is how technology works. We all get the human productivity increases. So my firm finished 100 years. So we have a think tank called the McKinsey Global Institute. We wrote it for internal purposes, but this book is now going around. We wrote a book called A Century of Plenty. See, when we look at life in 2-year installments, 3-year installments, we sometimes miss how much we've traversed over 100 years. So this book really talks about how much human progress has happened on any dimension of progress: education, health, economic well-being, all of that over a 100-year period. And it goes on to postulate that the next 100 years will be even better than the last 100 years, provided human beings make the right choices.
Yeah. So related thing, right? I would, listening to you, say that you're almost saying that consultancy will evolve. We'll move from structured problems with right answers to more and more unstructured problems.
Yeah. And to getting things done.
And to implementation. And therefore, one question is, if I'd ask you 2-3 new skills that the best consultants will have to learn.
One is they have to master the use of AI. I think that is a table stake. Frankly, not being AI literate will almost be like growing up in a vernacular medium school. Then all your opportunity set will get limited. Frankly, I mean, you like it or not, you can say what you want, but knowing English helped. Helped you, helped me, helped everyone in the room. So I think one skill that they have to learn in a hurry, and not just them, even I and you, is how are we incorporating AI sensibly into our life? That is going to become a table stake. The second is, how do you tune into what I call these higher order interaction, empathy, those kind of skills.
So emotions and soft skills.
Emotions, that frankly, and that can't be taught. You can only unlock it from within. you have to go through experiences like what this group went through. Because this is, it's an internal process. Kuch book nahi hai padhne ke liye, ki how do I become more empathetic?
Nayanta, we would argue, Ramesh, that a foundation in the social sciences can actually give you that ability to understand emotions better, if those courses are taught the right way.
And if those courses are not only taught in the right way, but they have a significant doing component to it.
Yes.
I mean,
completely.
Go live in
A lot of immersion, a lot of
live
questioning.
in a village for 2 weeks, no money, you figure out how to earn your own food. I mean, that's good.
So that whole experience and reflection kind of a piece, and I'm almost tempted to believe that the MBA will either need to be completely redefined or will go away.
MBA will be all about interaction. It will be around experiences. My son is just finishing his MBA next week. The guy was in 24 countries last year. And I said, oh, is this the new MBA? He said, yes, this is the new MBA. I think each of those experiences taught him something. One of that was sort of driving with a group of friends through New Zealand. You learn to live with people, do different things. One of that was scaling Kilimanjaro, which required physical presence. One of that was to go with a group of people to Machu Picchu. I mean, he's doing an international MBA, but I'm sure each of those has helped him either build deeper connections or an experience. So it will have to change. And I would say it's not just the MBA. I think all of education will change, and that's part of my excitement being part of Nayanta. The whole concept is that this learning cycle is a 4-part learning cycle. Okay, we learn on our own. We learn from peers. We learn where the teacher assists you, and we learn where the teacher leads you. Okay, and this is true of all learning that we have gone to. The mix changes. So I think a good academic curriculum should get this blend. Okay, the learning on your own component will increase for a set of skills because that has now become very easy. Then we have to focus on learning from peers, teacher-assisted learning, teacher-led learning. Then that changes the role of the teacher. Who's the teacher? Teacher is no longer the one that is distributing.
So stage on the stage goes away, right?
Yeah.
It's enabler, facilitator, experience designer.
Exactly.
It's conversation. Yeah, it's all of that.
But the role of the teacher is always there.
The role of the teacher is always there because the one thing that we have learned is that, for instance, we had similar fears of online learning, right? That the one-to-one experience of a student with a good teacher face-to-face is difficult to replicate in quality when you have a good teacher in the room.
I agree, because that teacher has the ability from experience to help you spot the problem, which no technology will give you.
Yeah, that's. We'll move to life post McKinsey.
Sure.
And I think you've spoken about philanthropy. You've also spoken about marathon running, and I want to get into what that does for you. But maybe speak broadly about how you've configured your life post McKinsey. How much of it is evolved? How much of, was there a design to it?
No, there was a design to it because I was very clear, by the way, that I'm going to live a long life, and I'm not retiring. So this was a decision I made. So when I turned 50, I went and told my colleagues in McKinsey that I will leave on my 55th birthday. That's why it's not an exact 30 years, but I was 29 years and 7 months when I left McKinsey. And between 50 and 55, I moved to a 60% at McKinsey model. Now, the biggest risk I was lucky that McKinsey allowed the model. I was luckier that I didn't move to what most people do, which is 60% salaries, 100% work. I shrunk my traditional work commitments also proportionately. So I made my assistant and my wife the conscience keepers. So every 3 months, they had to tell me in that 5-year period on whether I was lying or whether I was...
Actually at 60%.
At 60%. I used that my 51 to 55 years to figure out what I wanted to do. And by that time, there are a few causes that I was close to. This group was being formed. They got to know that I was thinking about it. I was invited into this group. I'm actually probably one of the last entrants into the Nayanta core group, because and we started the planning phase. Similarly, I started to spend time at IIT, which is my alma mater, and I wrote the strategic plan for it. I spent time at IIM Ahmedabad. Then my good friend 𝗥ส์𝗷𝗵𝗹𝗲 tapped into me to do it, and until about 6 months ago, I was on the board of Pratham, and I used to help Pratham on a lot of things till my wife became CEO of Pratham, and I keep joking that her day one impact as CEO was to fire one board member, which is so. But I continue to be involved with Pratham. So that's a very big part of what I do today, and the seeds for all of that was sown in those 5 years, because it just gave clarity that my purpose is to help build India through institutions. I know you said that it is to help through people. So my articulation is I want to help build India through institutions, because I think institutions give you a big multiplier. So if I'm here today, I am able to talk to 40 people. I can talk to 30 students. I can talk to, so that I get the multiplier through the institution thing. And India has been part of my life from
yeah, that's a common thread. It's running through right from the beginning. So we'll open to one or two audience questions, but
the second part of
what is marathon running for you?
The Help Build India is really working with the next breed of entrepreneurs in India. And this one, I can tell you, I don't know if I'm adding value to them, whether they see, if I'm adding, of course, they come to me, so they see some value, because I don't give them much money. I give time more than money. I learn a lot from these people. I think some of these people genuinely have this mindset that they can solve any problem. I mean, I don't want to make this a plug for the 𝗥ส์𝗷𝗵𝗹𝗲𝗀 guy, but he genuinely thinks that he can build a rocket and launch satellites from ISRO. The guy is 32 years old. There is another guy who thinks that he will solve the manual scavenger problem in this country. Both of these guys, by the way, were, I mean, the Prime Minister was in Nice, and 100 startups were showcased in Nice. They were part of the startups they were showcased. So working with young entrepreneurs makes me feel young. Marathon, quick thing, I would always run a little bit, but after a while, marathon became a way for me to push myself to do things that I seemingly thought I could not do. So when running 5 kilometers was easy, I started running 10. When running 10 was easy, I started running 20. When I was running 20, I decided I can run 40. When I ran my first 40, I decided to do my next 40. So for me, it became an ability to tell myself that there's infinite potential in me. It was one metaphor for it. And it has obviously all kinds of health benefits. For me, it's absolute me time. I don't run with anybody. I don't run with music. And it gives my wife extra time to sleep, which she loves. So all around, it's been a good thing for me.
Excellent. Any questions? We'll take maybe a couple of questions and then I'll do a wrap up. Harmeet and then Harmeet first and then...
Yeah, quick another question. In one of the parent interactions, you talked about Nayanta's philosophy of R is equal to 1 and G is equal...
N equal to 1 and R equal to G.
I really want you to share that with the...
It's not mine, by the way. Because I read stuff, I pick up things from what I read. 𝗥ส์𝗷𝗵𝗹𝗲 came up with this. 𝗥ส์𝗷𝗵𝗹𝗲 basically said that if you take a mindset of solving problems, saying N equal to 1, which is everyone is a unique customer, whether it applies to business, and R equal to G, that to that unique customer, I bring all the global resources. So his concept was that companies over time start to segment and homogenize people, and they miss this. And long before technology became possible, he asserted that it is possible for businesses to be designed with N equal to 1, R equal to G philosophy. I think a university should also have N equal to 1, R equal to G philosophy.
And that's, I think, in a way, we are trying to embed
N equal
that.
to 1 means every student is unique. And to that unique student, I will bring whatever resources that unique student needs. Because I think as Nayanta, we can do it. Because our biggest advantage...
Individualized journeys, basically.
And we don't have legacy. No one can ever tell us that this is how it has always been done here. Because nothing was done here. 1 year ago, this was a barren campus. So everything is being done here for the first time. So not being burdened by legacy at this point in time has to be the biggest asset that we have.
So, your life is when we listen as audience, it's about our love for the country and wishing the real change happen with the guiding them and, through consulting or through efforts which you're doing now. How would you look at the Gen Z and the next gen which will come up, Gen Alpha in future, in terms of their classical thinking about, they're more globally connected, wanting to try different things, can be calling out things far more, straightforward manner. They may not want to choose to invest in staying themselves in one place, one country, and all of that. That's not the way our generation or the older generation grew. So, what's the message for them? And likewise, what's the message for the seniors and the managers of how do you adapt?
And my message is simple. Every generation feels that they were the last of the romantic generations. Okay, we had country's love at heart, and we had selflessness and all of that. And next year, my grandfather thought that way about my father thought about me, and I'll think about my son that way. So that is a little bit of that is situational. So I would basically say two things, right? One is to the next generation, let them figure it out. I think they are a very conscious, aware generation. Let them figure it out. Let us help them figure it out. Let us not get into tell mode with them. Let us not become that village elder who's sitting at the entrance to the village and saying, in my youth, this village was very beautiful, and now see what you guys have done to it. So our role to them is to help figure it out. To our generation, I'll say, life is changing. You led a more utilitarian life than your grandparents did. I mean, my grandmother didn't go to a cinema theater all her life. That was the most wasteful and indulgent piece of expenditure that she could have done. Mere ghar mein home theater hai. I mean, if my grandmother had been alive, she would have said, "Beta, Ramesh, kya kar rahe ho tu? Ghar ke andar do logon ke liye theater banaya tumne." But so I'm just saying that we guys have to also loosen how strict we are and stop assuming that. When they're well intentioned, I'm telling you, they are. I mean, my kids may not come back. I mean, both of them live abroad. They may or may not come back. I mean, and my wife and I are absolute Indophiles, okay? And sometimes we feel like, kya ho raha hai and all, but it's their life. But I think they are very sensitive and sensible kids. I mean, when I just spent 10 days with my daughter, and she challenged me on a few things. And she challenges me a lot on environment. Brutal. Daughters with fathers can be brutal, I can tell you. We'll thank you for everything, but we will not pardon you for one thing. I said, what? For leaving this environment in a worse place than you got it. I mean, that's true. We've left the environment in a worse place than we got it. So, unko bhi pyar do aur humko bhi pyar.
Yeah, and I'm much more positive on the coming generations. I think their social consciousness is higher. I agree with what Ramesh has said. And also, if they are more independent, it's because they have been parented differently. And their experience and exposure is very different. I would also, if I wear the faculty hat, just urge you, don't go so much by these Gen X and Gen Z and Gen Alpha, because some researcher decided that on one particular date people would change. Surely that is a flawed thing. I mean, you can talk about people in terms of their upbringing, but on this context, I remember I had got Sanjeev Aga once to talk to my SPJMR students, and this is a slight digression in Rajishwar, about ethics. And Sanjeev picked up the mic and said, "You are my hope. Mine is the generation that has failed the country. We were middle class and we had the opportunity to go out of poverty. We became upper class and gave ourselves the lifestyle that we saw the rest of the world happen. We did not think about the 50% that we were leaving behind." So, I think that's where the philanthropy and all of that, I think.
50%, 98%. I was just talking to, I'm also an investor in several friends. I invest in an entrepreneur who has a hair straightening product. I mean, what a first world problem, right? My hair is, not that I don't have hair. My hair is not straight. And so they have a hair straightening product. And then she told me, "Ramesh, I'm solving a 1% problem. And I'm making money solving a 1% problem." There are a lot of people who are solving 1% problem. I'm not, by the way. She'll do well, I'll do well because of my investment in her. But that is not the problem to be solved. Problem to be solved is the drought is imminent. The people are going to run out of water. What have we done to restore water? And we have to solve both. I'm not saying solve one versus the other. So going back to an earlier question, there's no dearth of problems to be solved. There cannot be a better time to be on this planet than now for all of us, because we are all at a point where we can choose to do what we want to do. None of you need your job because it's a job. So I will end with saying that when you overlay purpose, then a lot of the other trappings go away. Position nikal jata hai, power nikal jata hai, paisa nikal jata hai, and this drives you like nothing else does. Which, by the way, is I've been reading a lot about it. Is what a lot of research on this topic is also saying. I mean, Arthur Brooks has written From Strength to Strength. David Brooks has written called Second Mountain. Linda Grayton has written around 100-Year Life. But they all converge on this whole thing, saying that, I don't know how many are above 50 or getting to 50, that the most glorious years of one's life are actually 50 to 75. Because you have a unique ability to contribute, and you have very little responsibility to anybody. And don't lose this opportunity. I'm saying this is a unique opportunity. Look after yourselves. If you're not healthy and happy, this 50 to 75 will just pass you by. It will pass you by in very unpleasant ways. Okay? You'll start using a walking stick, walker. You'll, on international flights, you'll start to ask for wheelchair, all terrible things, but don't go down that path. Thank you.
So these are Ramesh, two quick things. And one is, can you tell us a bit about your association with Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗲 and some things you picked up from him? And then the last is the Nayanta question. Tell us about your reading habits. So these two.
Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗲, I don't know how many of you are aware, he iconic leader of this country, founder of ICICI. My wife and I were just blessed that he came into our life. Okay, he came into our life. He had retired. He had moved to Chennai. I had moved to Chennai. He took a shine more to my wife than to me, which most people, that's how it happens. But so we would keep visiting him. And I can't tell you what all I learned from him, but sometimes when you're in just the presence of a master, a lot transfers to you. And go meet him for an hour. He had plenty of time because he had been retired. But the thing I learned from him most was when you're humble, you actually unlock yourself. So when I finished 25 years at McKinsey, a few of my colleagues wanted to celebrate it. So without my knowledge, they went and they got messages from people who knew me. So one message was from Tino Puri, who was the founder of McKinsey, who passed away, but he sent a message. But I still read that book once in a while. One message was from Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗲. This is Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗲, by the way. Padma Bhushan awardee, chairman of ICICI on every board. And he ends his message to me saying, I'm thankful to have Ramesh as a friend in my life. I mean, doesn't it tell something about a person that you have the ability to do more for the firm and for the country than I ever did? So I think this thing around humility characterizes leaders. And from Mr. 𝗥𝗺𝗲, I learned humility.
Tell us how you stay current, how you read, what you're reading, etc. So how would you advise them to think about their reading going forward? So
I would separate my reading into what I call tactical reading and thematic reading. Okay, tactical reading is just my interest in all things economy, manufacturing, innovation. So there, frankly, I'm always downloading a 15-page report on state of innovation in India, a 3-page article on Chinese pharmaceutical industry, and I'm processing that, and that's quite important. That's frankly, otherwise I'll lose my professional edge if I don't read up those things. If I don't, I worry a lot about AI and how China and US are running away. So that occupies a lot of my time, by the way. I don't want to I mean, if I look at it, 20-25% of my reading time will be just catching up. And I'm fortunate to be in multiple groups where interesting reading. I'm not in good morning, good evening, happy birthday groups. So I exit all those groups. I get some good stuff to read, and I'm reading that as well. Thematic reading shifts from time to time. Like I said, last few years, I've genuinely been caught up with this topic of this third chapter, second mountain, whatever. So I've been reading up a lot in that series, and after a while, frankly, I feel like I'm reading the same thing. So now I think now I feel I'm done with that. The other reading that I've started, and that I have to thank Nayanta for it, was I had not read India After Gandhi. So I think I attended one of the previous residencies, 𝗥𝗺𝗷𝗲𝗍. I now have a Kindle, so I downloaded it, India After Gandhi. It takes a long time to read a book like that. Golden Road, William Dalrymple. So I guess part of what I'm reading now is just reminding myself that, we were a high-achieving civilization. And sometimes we can tend to be critical of ourselves and all that. So I just want to remind myself factually of all the things that India has achieved, and be proud and transmit that pride. So that's my second set of reading now. If there is a third theme that comes, I'll tell you. But between these three, I stay quite...
So Ramesh, we're coming to the end of this conversation. So let me just thank you for, I think, a lot of learning. I think, one, there is a deep commitment to India which comes through. There is a love for manufacturing and implementation, I think, which has informed your approach to consulting. I think you've demystified and given us a very nice, constructive picture of consulting as a profession and the role that it plays, and also what we can take from consulting. Planning life transitions is something that I think is remarkable in the way that you talked about winding down 5 years, etc. And finally, at the end of it, throughout this interview, if you've noticed, almost every ambiguous question that I asked you, you managed to structure the unstructured question and give it back to me as one of two or one of three. Thank you very much. It's been an absolute privilege. Thank you.